Well, it wasn't the original title name. Our wives read the book and made some recommendations of ways to revise it a little bit, and then part of that revision was my wife actually, Sharon, saying, "Hey, what about the way?" Because the essence of this really is that both the farmer and the cardinal, Christ, are showing us the way. Initially, at least in my mind, this was really this was not going to be anything more than a great story that David had told one Sunday that we were going to put together in a little children's book and probably just offer it to the
our friends.
Anybody that would take it, to our friends or to the congregation. And then as it started to take on a life and started to evolve and so forth, we thought, you know what, maybe there's a bigger opportunity for this. There's a beauty to the simplicity of the story, but there's a beauty to the simplicity of Christ's redemption for us as well. And a lot of times that gets lost in some very highbrow theological conversation, but the simplicity of Christ's message, the simplicity of his parables, the simplicity of his message, I think comes out very clearly in this particular story.
I gave a sermon illustration in a sermon a couple of years ago. Yeah, a long time ago. And after the sermon and the illustration, Chip said to me that he found the illustration really meaningful. And so he asked me if I would consider writing about it, if I would put it in a book form. And I just thought, I don't know how I could do that. But to me, a really meaningful part of it was he told me a story about sharing the illustration with his son when, at bedtime one night.
I'll lay down with him at night before he goes to bed. He'll say, "Dad, tell me a story." And when I was younger, I used to tell him all kinds of crazy, goofy stories, make them up and whatever else. So I sat down one night and started talking to him about this little story about a farmer and him recognizing this bird, which is the sparrow in this particular story, being kind of trapped in this greenhouse. And then I started to kind of tell the rest of the story and so forth, and how this cardinal was sent in by the farmer and freed the bird, and got to the end of the story, and I said, "Do you know what all of this, what all this means, the symbolism of this?" And so then I got into the God is the farmer, and that Jesus is the cardinal, and the sparrow is somebody like you and me. And as I kind of elaborated on the story, he kind of said, "Hey, that's pretty cool, Dad," which right there was enough. I kind of got the feeling after he said that.
I came across this quote from C.S. Lewis, and he said, "A children's book that is meaningful to children only is not an effective children's book." And the point he's making is a really good children's story would have grab for a person of any age. In the book, the sparrow is stuck, and he's scared, and he doesn't know how to get out or get unstuck. At this stage of life, I appreciate, understand, and have high compassion for times in life where we may feel stuck. Mark did a great job with illustrating the sparrow, because the sparrow in some cases looks scared, he's apprehensive, he's frightened, and we get all that. So feeling sympathy to the person who's in a hard place is something that I hope people would feel. There's this tenderness in the farmer. He's caring, he's careful, he loves the stuff of creation, and he's the God figure. And then in the end of the book, where you have this sense of the cardinal showing the sparrow the way out. The sparrow is flying, and there's something about the illustration again where he has this kind of freedom, happy eagerness in his expression. And the cardinal, I said, is like this. And if you're a person who's been in really hard places in life because the circumstances have been difficult, or frankly because you've made some really bad choices yourself, and these things can all happen in different ways, and you get a sense of God caring for you and wanting to and making the effort to come set you free, and then you see the sparrow get freed. I mean, I mentioned I started crying when I saw the end of it. And the cardinal is the Jesus figure. And the idea of the cardinal is, the biblical term is incarnation, that The farmer has a dilemma. He's trying to set the sparrow free, but he scares the sparrow. And if he tries to go to the greenhouse and sort of call for him or tap on the windows, it just scares the sparrow even more. And the farmer's heart is to help him, but the gap between who the farmer is and who the sparrow is so big that it won't work. And so this is like the biblical story of God wanting to speak to us, but for many of us, he just scares us if we don't know him. And we can't understand him. So the farmer says, if only I were a bird, in essence. That's how the story went. If only I were a bird, then I could go in there and he could understand me and I could help him out. That's the Jesus figure. God sending his son Jesus into the world. So now we have somebody who we can sort of understand and relate to and is not quite so frightening to us. The other little piece I would say about the cardinal is I had a time in my life when I was in college when I was in a really depressed place. I was feeling really hopeless, and I was praying, and I was crying when I was praying. And it was a winter afternoon, it was bleak, it was gray, outside there was snow on the ground, it was icy in the woods out this window I was looking out. And I'm praying, God, I just have got to know somehow that you're with me, that you know. I just somehow need some kind of a sign, a something that helps me know that I'm just not alone and it's not hopeless. I open my eyes from the prayer and I look out the window and there's this bright red cardinal perched on this branch. And the whole landscape was bleak and icy and white and gray. And in the midst is this cardinal, this just scarlet red cardinal. And for me, the way I was praying in the sense of God, I got to somehow know that you're real and that you hear me and that you know my life. And I opened my eyes and that cardinal was there. I took it as God saying, I'm here, I know. And from that moment on, there have been times in my life where cardinals have shown up. And this is just a little thing for me. It's a little personal thing for me. But ever since then, cardinals have had immense meaning to me as kind of a symbol of hope, a sense of God's presence, and he knows, what's going on. I hope that it's just a great story. And I hope that it would appeal to people regardless of whether they're people of faith or not. I hope that it's just a great, meaningful story. I think it has rich texture to it. I think the more life you've lived, the more subtleties I hope you can pick up in the story. So a child might like it because of the basic story. This is a bird, he's trapped, he's helpless, he needs help, can somebody help him? That's kind of a child's view of the story. If you're an adult or you've lived some life, had some hard experiences, hopefully you can pick up on more nuances to it. But I just also want to say, again, I'm repeating myself, I think the illustrations are fabulous. I think Mark did a great job. What I love dreaming about with this book is a mom or a dad and a child. A mom or a dad and a child having sort of intimate parent-child time, and that they would talk about this book. And there might be, what do you think that means? And do you think that farmer represents anybody? Do you think that cardinal, just that intimacy, relationship between parents and children, that's like the scene that I like to think about most with it.
I remember when my children were younger, we had a series of videos that were Bible stories, and the beauty of those videos was that it was telling the stories biblically, and they were all accurate, and we would look at Bible verses that would support that and so forth. But the illustrations kind of freed the children to kind of see it from that perspective. And the one thing that Mark has done with this book, which I find very interesting, is it gives the ability, again, and David is right, sit there with your child and read the story. But as I've noticed in my own personal experience with my kids, when we would read to them, if there was a book with illustrations, they couldn't necessarily read, but they could see the story and understand the story, and they would see it from a wide open perspective. You weren't guiding their thoughts, you weren't taking them on that journey as they looked at the illustrations. And to know that we're actually giving a child the ability to hear this story and to look at these illustrations and then just kind of take off and soar with them, I find to be, it's intriguing. It's interesting to know that you can provide that opportunity for a young man or young woman.